Wednesday, February 11th, 2026. I'm Trustee Lois Chan Pedley. Before moving on to our agenda, I want to pause and acknowledge the tragic event in Tumbler Ridge. Everyone across VSB is deeply saddened by the shocking tragedy. Our thoughts are with the entire community, particularly the students, families, and staff of Tumbler Ridge Secondary during this very difficult time. As a public education community, we know how deeply events like this can resonate, and we stand in care and solidarity with those affected. I ask that we take a moment of silence together to show our care and collective sympathy. Thank you, everyone. I'll now call the meeting to order. With deep gratitude and respect, we're honored to be learning and unlearning on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Kmuthkwim, Squamish-Alkomeo, and Tsleil-Waututh. This meeting is currently being broadcasted live, and both the audio and video recordings will be accessible to the public for viewing even after the meeting ends. Footage from this meeting may be viewed from within Canada or anywhere else in the world. The board has a strong commitment to ethical conduct. This includes the responsibility of all participants to conduct themselves with appropriate decorum and professionalism. As the chair of the committee, it is my responsibility to see that the decorum is maintained. Following the presentations, there will be an opportunity to ask questions for clarification purposes. I ask all participants to please keep questions and comments to the content provided in the presentation or report. And before we move on to that, I ask that all participants please introduce yourselves, starting on my left.
Trustee Christopher Richardson, member of the committee.
Trustee Susie Ma, Vice Chair of the committee.
Trustee Janet Fraser, she, her, committee member.
Okay, thank you. I'm Catherine McLean. I represent VASA.
Teo Huberman, Vancouver District Students' Council.
Trevor Wrench, VEPFA.
Suzette Magri, QP15.
Carl Janzi, Vancouver Secondary Teachers Association.
Ishi Dinem, Vancouver DPAC.
Hayden O'Connor, PASA.
Flavia Coughlin, Secretary Treasurer.
Helen McGregor, she, her, Superintendent, CEO.
Laura Lee Russell, Executive Director, Finance.
Maureen McRae Stanger, Associate Superintendent, she, her.
Janice Myers, she, her, Associate Superintendent.
Great, thank you very much. There are no items for approval tonight, so we are going to section 2, information items. And item 2.1 is the receipt of advocacy subcommittee report, for which I will ask trustees Richardson and Ma, the chair and vice chair of the advocacy subcommittee, to please present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So the advocacy subcommittee did meet under the chairmanship of Susie Ma on Wednesday, January 21st. You have the minutes before you. The primary issue that we did discuss amongst ourselves and are presented here today are 3 motions to come before BCSTA. And they were a draft motion regarding the review of $10 a day policy for equitable access to childcare. Motion 2 was enabling or encouraging before and after school care spaces in new school builds. And the third motion, it dealt with suggesting that the provincial government undertake a review that would clarify the roles of DPACs and PACs as they're an integral part of our operation. And I think before you are various comments that were discussed and some key takeaways for each of those. And I guess I would, unless Susie has some comments, yes?
Yes, thank you. So what happened with these motions was the advocacy committee had an opportunity to discuss these, and these were actually deemed time sensitive. So they did appear before the board and were approved at the January full open board meeting.
Thank you, trustees Ma and Richardson. Are there any questions for them on the report? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. Next is section 3, discussion items. For item 3.1, I will ask Secretary Treasurer Flavia Coughlin to please present item 3.1, draft policy review, trustee remuneration and expense policy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, everyone. This item is included in agenda package starting at page 7, and it's coming here for discussion after the board approved a motion directing an ad hoc committee working with the Secretary Treasurer to develop a draft trustee remuneration and expense policy for review by this committee and subsequent consideration by the board. In the report, we have provided a summary of current policy that exists embedded within Policy 7, Board Operations, as well as comparative options for policy. So I will provide a few highlights, and all members have a printed copy of the full package, so as we engage in discussion, you can reference the materials that have been provided. So for trustee remuneration, effective September 1 each year, trustee remuneration in the Vancouver School District is adjusted based on the annual change in the Vancouver Consumer Price Index. As of September 1, 2025, the annual remuneration is as follows. The chair receives an annual remuneration of $40,315, vice chair $39,448, and trustees receive $37,215. The existing framework does not specify how base remuneration levels are initially established or periodically reviewed for appropriateness relative to governance responsibilities, organizational scale, or public sector comparators. In terms of what policy options can be considered, I have included 3 options for your consideration, and we can add other options that committee members or participants may suggest. The first one is benchmarking against comparable British Columbia school districts. And in this case, trustee remuneration will be determined through periodic benchmarking against school districts with comparable characteristics such as student enrollment, operating budget, and governance complexity. In BC, Vancouver is the second largest school district, so comparators in this case would likely be Surrey, which is the largest school district in the province, Coquitlam, the 3rd largest school district in the province. Past that point, the level of comparability may not be adequate. And I have provided sample policy statements from the Surrey School District and the Richmond School District, which is another neighboring school district. Coquitlam has a different policy style, which is included in option 2. Option 2 is benchmarking against City of Vancouver municipal elected officials. And in this case, trustee remuneration would be benchmarked against compensation provided to elected officials of the City of Vancouver, with adjustments to recognize differences in statutory authority and scope of responsibility. And I have provided here the sample policy statement from Coquitlam School District, which uses the average compensation provided to city councilors in 3 jurisdictions that the school district spans, Coquitlam, Port Moody, and Port Coquitlam, and then applies additional percentages for indemnity of chair and vice chair. The third option is alignment with provincial public sector remuneration guidance. And in this case, trustee remuneration will be determined with reference to provincially established remuneration principles for public sector boards, such as those set out in the Treasury Board guidelines, which are attached to this package. These guidelines would provide a structured framework that emphasizes proportionality, organizational complexity, and the public service nature of board service. And the difference between the current approach and the Treasury Board directive modeled approach would be, in the current approach, trustees received a flat annual remuneration. The Treasury Board directive approach considers a retainer plus meeting fees. So all trustees would receive the same retainer for the year, and based on the meetings that they are required to attend, there will be an additional stipend provided. The current remuneration is CPI indexed annually. At the provincial level, there's a periodic review of structure and value of remuneration. In the current approach, there's limited differentiation based on participation in meetings. Under the Treasury Board directive, there is significant differentiation both on role and workload. And of course, our approach is very much education sector specific, as I could not locate any BC school district that is using the provincial model. The Treasury Board one would be highly comparable to BC Crown corporations. And I have provided a potential, for consideration, a potential policy statement. So for the next section of the policy, trustee expenses, we have provided the current policy that is applied in Vancouver, and the guidelines that are provided to trustees on an annual basis with respect to expenses that will be reimbursed by the VSB. Here the policies across school districts are very similar in terms of what is reimbursed and what is not reimbursed. Vancouver is a little bit of an outlier with the reimbursement that we provide for childcare. Other school districts don't have that codified in policy. We do not provide reimbursement for vehicle mileage expenses, and in some districts there is a specific stipend that is provided in lieu of that. We also have a stipulation that we are probably the only school district in the province that has paid parking at its board office, so trustees are required to pay for the privilege of parking in this building. So this is just a high-level overview of the materials that are provided in your package. And for the balance of the meeting, we want you to engage in a policy discussion that will help us narrow down the policy options that will be used to design the new policy. And we have provided 4 policy discussion topics. The first one is comparator for determining remuneration levels. So we would ask you in the small groups to consider if school district benchmarking or municipal elected official benchmarking should form the primary basis for determining trustee remuneration levels. The second policy discussion is the trustee remuneration structure. In the small groups, we will ask you to consider if a flat annual remuneration model with differentiated roles or a retainer plus meeting fee model is most appropriate for the Vancouver School Board. In the third discussion, we would ask you to discuss remuneration review cycle and indexing. And in the small groups, we ask you to consider if trustee remuneration should be reviewed once per term with annual CPI indexing or be reviewed on an annual basis. And the final discussion topic relates to trustee expenses. And here we will ask in the small group discussion to consider if the current policy and guidelines are sufficient or if refinements are required. And if any specific refinements are required, we would ask you to provide specific suggestions for changes to be incorporated in the new policy. And all the information that is collected tonight will be shared with the ad hoc committee and the board, and will inform the development of a new draft trustee remuneration and expense policy for board consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Flavia. Are there any questions for the presentation? Oh, well, okay, Susie, you go first and then Janet.
Thank you very much. Who is on the ad hoc committee?
Trustee Fraser, Trustee Chan Pedley, and I believe Trustee Young.
Any follow-up, Susie? Okay, Janet?
Thank you. I'm curious because sometimes I've heard about trustees in other districts being able to buy into or access medical dental benefits. I don't know if that's a real thing or if it's kind of a myth that somehow exists in a different part of the province. I'm curious if that is something that could be explored for Vancouver trustees.
So that used to be permitted under the BCPC buying plan, but it was discontinued sometime in the last 10 years. So it's no longer permitted.
Any other? Oh, Carl, please go ahead.
Wondering if consider a fourth option, which would be pegging the remuneration to the same scale that the unionized employees go up by every year. As another way of considering, because we put the same boat, they would understand what it's like for us. So it would be 3, 3, 3, and 3 for the next 4 years. I'm only semi-joking, but it is for your consideration.
Any other questions and suggestions? The suggestions are, oh yeah, okay. They will come in the discussion. Please bring that up in the discussions. Please, Susie.
Okay, so I noticed that in the examples, yeah, Susan, do you want me to yell harder? Or? Okay, so I noticed that in the material, you talked about looking at Surrey, Richmond, and Coquitlam because they're sort of closest to enrollment, size, whatever. So is that why like North Vancouver, West Vancouver, New Westminster, and Delta were omitted? Like, do they have similar language? Because I think that if we are looking towards comparing, I think it's really important to see that. And I also noticed that in the samples, we do not actually have the dollar figures for these 3 districts. And I think that that would also be very useful in our discussions.
So, through you, Chair, in terms of policy formats, the districts that you noted have similar policies to Surrey and other school districts other than Vancouver, where they do periodic reviews of trustee remuneration and establish that for the term, and they may have CPI indexing. For the policy discussion today is not about setting the remuneration for trustees going forward. It is simply giving guidance to the ad hoc committee as to what model to use, and then within that, then there will be refinements about like if the best option for Vancouver would be benchmarking against other school districts, then the next level of discussion would be which would be the school districts that are best used as comparators in terms of trustee remuneration. And that may be like either a one-time policy decision or something that is evaluated every term because school district structure may change over time.
Any follow-ups? Susie, you good? Okay. Any other questions for the presentation? If I don't see any, then we're finished with that item. And before we adjourn to begin the small group discussion, I realize I have made a mistake and I need to go back to item 2.1. I did not ask the committee to receive the report. Christopher, you were supposed to remind me. No, I'm kidding. Can I please ask the committee to whether you agree to receive the report by show of hand? Yeah, okay. By consensus, we so received the report. Okay, back to 4, thank you. We have addressed all the items on the agenda tonight, and then we can move on to the small group discussion that will have, we'll compile all that information and to take to the ad hoc committee. The live broadcast will end and the meeting will adjourn following the conclusion of the small group discussions at or before 8:30 p.m. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Look forward to the discussion, and I will see you sometime, I think, in May. Thank you very much.
For this portion, you have a number noted on your nameplate, and